Hit it, Charlie. And friends, Romans, and countrymen, lend me both of your ears tonight, as we always say, whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world. We thank you, sincerely thank you, for taking the time to tune in. Tonight, we're going to wade through the mess to get to the truth. And oh boy, we got us a humdinger. We got us a dilly here, I'm telling you. Wow. We want you to reach out, share whatever devices you might be using, use them, tag people, call people, share it with people. Go outside and holler at your neighbor across the street or over the hedge and tell them that the George Espinlove Show is live right now. And we got us a humdinger here tonight. My co-host, Ed Temple, out of Columbus, Ohio.
Did you just say co-host?
Yeah.
I thought I was just sidekick.
No, Ed. Didn't we settle that several weeks ago?
I can't remember.
Oh, the man's always busting on me. But I'll tell you what, it's fun. He keeps me on my toes and he keeps me laughing. And then we have with us tonight Dr. Douglas G. Frank. Wow. This man is incredible, to say the least. We have been talking probably for, I guess, pretty near an hour, if not an hour, behind the scenes before we ever came on here tonight. And this is really gonna perk you up, and you're gonna find out the truth. And I do want to say this: this is the first man that I met. Now, you and Ed and me and millions of other people across this country and around the world, we have heard noise, chaos, confusion, this, that, those, and these for months and months and months and months. Narratives that are here today and change tomorrow. Goalposts that are up close and all of a sudden they're moved back. But this man, I find it incredible. This man has stayed away from all the noise, the media, the news, and all that stuff so he can research and do these models that he has done. And this man's been doing it a long, long time. And so I have to, if I didn't have my headphones on, I'd tip my hat to you, but I'll tip my hat to you anyhow. Job well done. Job well done.
Thank you.
And I think you'll be delighted with some of the things you hear tonight. I I think it'll lift up your spirits. I really do. And we're glad to have you, Dr. Frank. And just to kick this thing off, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Well, thank you for having me. I can tell we're going to have a fun conversation. I'm a scientist. I have been doing science pretty aggressively for about 40 years now. I had an academic career at the beginning and then moved into business. And also, I am the math and science chair at the Schilling School for Gifted Children in Cincinnati, Ohio. So, but I call that recess. It's like they're paying me to play because I get to teach NASA kids, like my friends tell me. So, but I'm an electrochemist by training, which means that I study things that when you put a piece of metal in water and you put some electricity on it, what happens? And the reason why that's relevant to this discussion is because the nice thing about electrochemistry is you can model reactions. You can put coatings on surfaces. You can control what happens, which chemical reactions happen when and how and why. You can model just about any chemical reaction there is that way. And so I've been modeling that stuff for quite some time. And the mathematics that you use in all that modeling is the same mathematics you need in epidemiology. So sort of as a hobby for all these years, I modeled AIDS epidemic, I modeled SARS, I modeled Ebola, I've modeled all these things. I've modeled sunspots, I've modeled elections, I love to model. I just enjoy doing it. But also because I'm a teacher, I always use really practical models with my students. And so I get to go cycle through the various types of modeling all the time. That's a great thing. So that's who I am. I'm really a scientist in my gut, in my heart, and I love math and I love teaching. So how about that for an introduction to me?
Well, first off, I hate to tell you this, but I also teach calculus too.
Oh, good. Then we're going to speak the same language.
Unfortunately, but anyways, let me go back. So you kind of talked about models. Can you talk about your models page that you have?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'll start with my exchange student. So what happens is about middle of the year, I typically, after I've taught my students at least a quarter or so of calculus, is I try to pick something practical to work on. And this year we would model the election because it's an election year. But by coincidence, this year one of my students is an exchange student from Wuhan, China. So of course we had to model that, and I spent half of my Christmas vacation getting ready for that. So we hit the ground running in January, and we were modeling the epidemic in Wuhan. And so then, as my head of school started asking me, "Hey, will you? We're supposed to take some students to Europe. Would you tell us what's going to happen in Europe?" So I did all the calculations and told her it's going to be peaking in Europe about April 1st. So we better not go because that was our departure date. And it wasn't that we were worried about the health of our students. Our students are going to be fine. COVID doesn't hurt the kids. It's that once you're over there, what if they close the borders? What if one of them gets injured and you have to go to the hospital, et cetera, et cetera? There are all these other issues, and the president's closing down flights, and who knows what would happen. It's a bad idea. Let's don't do that.
Right.
So I was already predicting that. And she says, "Well, tell us about Ohio. What's going to happen in Ohio?" So I started modeling Ohio, and I said, "Yeah, Ohio is going to peak about middle of April. So probably it'll be done by the end of April or somewhere early in May, and the governor will let us finish out school and whatnot." So I was giving her those kinds of guidance and things. So, but I have a pattern that I do. Whenever I make a prediction, I always post it on my Facebook page, because my brother always used to say, when you make a prediction, write it on a piece of paper, seal it in an envelope, mail it to yourself. And that way everybody knows you made the prediction. So I've been using Facebook that way for about 10 years. I put my predictions up. And then that way it's documented. What did I predict, when, and how? And so I started making my predictions about the virus back in February and putting them up there. And before I knew it, I hit my 5,000 limit on my personal page. So we started this new page called Dr. Frank Models. And I just checked a few minutes ago, it's up to 22,000 people. We're adding about 1,000 a day right now. And when you add up all the shares and everything, it's something like 50,000 people a day are seeing what's happening on our page. It's kind of spooky because that isn't what I set out to do. When the news started getting loud and noisy, I said, I'm not going to be able to stay focused listening to all that. So I made a rule, keep myself dark, No news, no media, no anything except just the data. I tried to keep myself submerged in that, and I was successful for the most part. I had a couple of tiny leaks along the way, but really mostly good until yesterday. Yesterday, I had to actually watch one of the press conferences, and we can get into that. But I had to because the governor was going to announce our academic policies for next year, and my head of school said, "Hey, Doug, I need you to do that." So I did. And guess what? He postponed it till Thursday. So now I have to watch a second news conference on Thursday. There you go. And I didn't enjoy the first one even a little bit. So there you go.
George, can you put up a banner that just says talk about? I'm gonna ask him about the masks.
About the mask.
Yeah, about these. About this.
Oh, that mask.
Oh, that mask.
So, what do you think about the masks?
Oh, you mean whether people should wear them or not?
That's right.
Okay, when people ask me this question, I always give the same answer. If you're a surgeon and you're doing surgery on a patient, you put a mask on. That's not to protect you from the patient. That's to protect the patient from you. And then you do your surgery, and then an hour later, you throw the mask away. And maybe you do another surgery an hour from now, and you use a new mask. And what you're doing as a surgeon is you're trapping the germs that are coming out of you and disposing of them.
So you live in Ohio.
Yep.
You're Governor DeWine. You get in front of the people of Ohio, which he seems to get on CNN and everywhere. He seems to be like one of the leaders in the national news because he's a Republican that's not really behaving like the other Republican governors. So you're him. What do you tell the public? What should they do?
I'd say if you're sick, stay home, please, and wear a mask. That's what I would say if I were the governor. And then if you're not sick, if you're in an area that is where there's a good infection going, practice social distancing and wash your hands and protect your people that you love. Protect your older people. Don't do dumb things. It's cool. So like if I said you're going to drive to the grocery store, you could be killed on the road on your way there. But so I would say drive carefully, right? That's exactly what I tell people with COVID. You know, anybody could catch it anytime, and it could happen. But if you're smart, you drive carefully. You won't get in a car crash. So with COVID, if you're not sick, I would say don't wear a mask. I actually think it's probably worse to wear a mask than not to. If you're not sick, it's probably a bad idea.
And then what about the you're the big thing that the governor is having a hang up on is what about kids going to school this year and the teachers? How should the schools deal with that?
Well, this is kind of new to me a little bit. Not the question. Well, I teach at a school for gifted kids, and we had to do distance learning for most of the fourth quarter, and I can tell you it just dramatically diminishes your ability to do a great job as a teacher.
Dr. Frank, I don't...
my mic is muffled?
Yeah, it's a little muffled.
Yeah, maybe cut under.
Yeah, maybe. So if you're the governor, what would you... I'm going to re-ask you that.
Okay.
So
is that better?
Yeah.
Is that better?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're the governor, what would you do about kids going to school this fall?
I'd send them in. I'd send them all back. Absolutely send them all back. And then I would let each county decide, or each city even, what would be best for your area. So, like, for example, in my county, Warren County, we haven't even had a death for 6 weeks. So, and, we're a clean area. So I would say our county, see all you kids back in school. And then if an infection comes up, okay, it's going to happen. There are going to be little breakouts for a while, just like there was a flu infections and whatnot. Then deal with it, be practical about it. But to keep kids locked up in their houses is not good for their emotional health. It's not good for their educational health. It's not good for us in a lot of ways. And by the way, COVID is contagious, but what makes it contagious is how it's transmitted. Kids that are healthy, it really has a tough time spreading kid to kid. It's basically people have immune deficiencies of some kind or some comorbidity. They're the ones who get sick. So if I had a student, for example, who had really bad asthma or something, yeah, we might set him, okay, look, you sit over here until this COVID stuff behind, you sit over here and, come to class, but we're going to protect you. that's how I would address it. You see where I'm going? In other
Yeah.
words, I want to be smart and rational. All the kids should be going back to school. That's my opinion.
Okay.
So you've charted or you've modeled all 50 states and 20 different countries.
Yeah.
Where do you get your numbers from?
Good question. Multiple sources. At the beginning, the states were really doing a very poor job reporting. So I would go to a couple of sites around the country. There's a COVID monitoring project. There's the Worldometers. There's Wikipedia. Wherever I could scrape up data, I would. And even then I had trouble. And so what was sort of fun is as the page became popular, I must have a dozen people that are sending me data every day. They're getting the reports. I even have mayors and mayors and legislators who send me the data before it's publicly released, and I put it right into my models. So one of the cool things about the page is it's not merely me. There are a lot of people participating and helping me to make the page what it is. So that's where I get my data. And that's been a challenge too, I'll tell you, throughout. At the beginning, it was hard because you couldn't find reliable sources and they all disagreed with each other. So I was always trying to reconcile them to each other. And then it got about a third of the way up the peak in America, about a third of the way in, things started getting stable and states' websites started to become more reliable and good ways to get information. But then about the peak in America, the CDC and WHO changed the definitions of what counted as a COVID case. And so states started going back and reporting older data. And then everything kind of went to flinders for a while. It was really tough to kind of sift through the data and find the right data that worked really well. And then now, as we're coming down to the end of the peak, a lot of this, think about it. You're in the middle of this miserable, epidemic. Everybody's going crazy. People are dying. Okay. It's not a very stable situation. But now that we're at the end, people have a chance to go back and review their records. So states are going back and reviewing their vital records. They're finding cases they missed. They're finding deaths they missed. They're correcting their records. And so now the numbers are all changing around again. So it's like there are periods of time when things are really stable. It's easy to gather data, easy to track. Now it's kind of one of those disaster times. The data are really kind of going crazy in a few states. Not all states, just a few of them.
That's refreshing to hear from your end. Now, here in Delaware, as we push close to the waters, our King Carney, some call
is that your governor?
Yes, that King Carney is the governor.
I don't know any news, so I don't know.
Yeah. King Carney, we were in phase 2, supposed to go into phase 3. And they'd send you these little email thingies, and every time I get one, I'd never read. I'd just trash it. But anyhow, we were to go into phase 3, I think last Monday, this Monday, whatever it was. But now, because of the spike ups, he's talking about starting and to shut us all down all over again. So I find your analysis quite refreshing as compared to King Carney and other places across the country. Dr. Frank, tell me what is what, and that's why we call it wading through the mess to get to the truth. On one hand, you're saying that this thing is coming to an end, it's coming down. On the other end, I got this guy over here that's telling me we might have to shut you down again, lock you up, and all these other good things like we did before. Why? I mean, you're getting the data. You've run this data.
Yes.
But yet we're getting this narrative out here. Any particular? Do you have any opinion about that?
Yeah, sadly, I do. At the beginning of the epidemic, the states didn't have good websites because they didn't know what they were doing. And they had to figure out how to gather the data, how to present the data. By about halfway into the peak, most of the states had their websites working pretty well. And you could tell right off the bat which states wanted you to know what they were doing. Some states even gave you the raw data. Click a link, download the file, and look at the data. So in other words, they were really transparent. Other states became less transparent, and it was sudden and it was stark. The contrast is easy to see. I think it's the state of South Carolina. I'm working from memory here. Their governor is an attorney, and he thinks it's a violation of HIPAA rules to show any data regarding death, except for the total. So if you go to the South Carolina website, there's no data about the deaths in the state. So, and if we get into this, I'll explain it. Monitoring cases is really the wrong way to track the epidemic. It's subject to all kinds of problems. I'm a scientist, so I like to have good controls on my data, and cases are the worst. Next better are hospitalizations, and the absolute best to track are deaths, especially deaths when they've been assigned to a specific date, not necessarily the reported death. So why am I going to this long story? Because you can tell state by state which states want you to know what's up and which states don't, because you can tell right on the website. If they're showing you the details, if they're showing you all the information you need to understand what's going on that day, ding, that state wants to open up, and that state is giving you the evidence to justify why they want to open up. Now, it's interesting that I say that because I don't know which states are opening up. A minute ago, you were talking about phase 2 and phase 3. I don't even know what that is. I have no clue what that is because I don't read any of that. I deliberately keeping myself out of that. I don't want to know, hey, state XYZ opened up last week, so I'm going to be looking for cases. I want to stay completely objective. I don't know what's happening. Now, I wrote about this on the page today. If the news report or your governor is, when they come up and they give you the daily reports, if the first number they tell you is cases, then they want to stay closed. They want to keep control. They're going slow because cases are the least reliable and easiest to manipulate number out there. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say that 10% of the people pretend 10% of the people are sick, and you do 100 cases, you're going to find 10 cases. You test 100 people, you'll find 10 cases. Well, if you want the number to go up tomorrow, what do you have to do? Test 200 people. Now you get 20 cases. So you can control what the number is by how many tests you do.
So that leads us to a question. So what about the politicization of science? You talk about.
Yeah, you'll see that I comment on that a lot. And my phrase always goes, science and politics don't play well together. Anytime a scientific question enters the political realm, you can basically kiss it off for decades. It won't be resolved because what happens is funding comes into it. Scientists try to get funding. They have to appeal to the right sensibilities or they won't get funding. And so then scientists I'm not saying scientists are corrupt. They just need funding. So what happens is the whole thing just becomes a big political mess and the issues don't get resolved. All I have to do is point to climate change. That should be a simple scientific question. What is the state of the climate? We've got lots of good tools out there to measure. We've got lots of good modelers. That's going to take decades to clean up this mess. Politics gets into it, right?
Yeah.
So if cases come out first, it's something else is going on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so is it safe to say that there are a lot of people that don't believe in certain science that play along to get government funds?
Is it safe to say? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, in other words, do people play along to get government grants?
Oh, you think? That's you should. All you have to do is take out a stack of proposals. See, I used to have academic grants, and so when you receive federal grants, I've had funding from NSF, from Air Force, a whole bunch of NIH, a lot of different funding, Department of Energy. Because you receive grants, you get to review grants. So they'll send you get a stack of grants. You just read the first paragraph of every grant, and you know what the correct thing to say is to get funded. That's not an accident.
Okay.
I have a lot of stories, but we don't have a lot of time.
Well, okay, so first off, let's hit this question this lady has. So Kathy Latshaw says Ohio Columbus Dispatch headline an hour ago: coronavirus cases remain elevated. New hospitalization reached their highest point in 3 weeks.
So I would go to the Ohio website and I would look and see. And the problem with that statistic is, what if the highest point it had reached so far was 1? Okay, now they would be at 2, and it would be the highest that they've reached. So the problem with, when I teach my students, we play a game. When I'm teaching statistics classes, I say, how to lie with statistics. I say, let's say you want to give the impression that things are good right now. How would you report this? Let's say you wanted to give the impression that things are bad right now. How would you report this? So we play that game. And there are so many ways to manipulate the numbers. That question, or that, I shouldn't say, because I don't mean to imply anything about that lady.
Right.
That headline, to me, is like raw meat for how to lie with statistics. I can give you a lot of stories. If you want to really know what's going on with hospitalizations in Columbus, go to the Ohio website, and the data are right there. You don't have to believe me. Go look for yourself, and you can click on the county, and the data are right there. They even graph it out for you on the webpage. So the Ohio webpage is pretty good. You have to dig. The first page you come into is basically full of all the danger kind of numbers. But then as soon as you go past that page and dig into the links, you can really find the information you want to know. And I did that last night. I went on a live chat with my members on my page, and I don't know, maybe something like 10 or 15 counties. I actually showed them how to get the data on our own page. Texas is a page like that too. Really a good page.
Wow.
Yeah, and so what have you heard about any of these kind of conspiracy theories, and what do you think about them?
Yeah, I'm not a conspiracy guy. I'm a data guy. So if for example, you asked me a political question.
Mm-hmm.
You said, why would the governor want to do something X, Y, or Z, right? That's kind of a politically charged question. And I could say, oh, he's an evil Nazi or something.
Yeah.
And then, or he's a socialist, or whatever. Or he's a communist, or, I don't do that.
Right.
What I like to do is I like to say, okay, well, what is his behavior? What is he telling his people? And if a state is not telling you what you need to know where you stand, I think that tells you something about your state government. So that would be as close as I would get to a conspiracy theory. What do I know? I know they don't want you to know the truth. That's what I know. So that's the evidence. So, and if it was all the states that were like that, then I would say, okay, maybe this is hard to do. Maybe it's hard to get the data. Maybe they don't have the technology. Maybe don't have the skilled people. But so many of the states have such amazing websites with so much transparency that you can explore to your heart's content. I'm a data guy. It's like heaven for me to, my heart palpitates when I see all these data. I love analyzing data. So there you go.
Why was you mentioned pre-show, you said, why is a strong virus not necessarily a bad thing? Why is a strong virus not necessarily a bad thing?
As a scientist, yeah. If I were a scientist, yeah. For example, for many years, I was the Rotary representative, Rotary International in Southern Ohio for Polio Plus, where we were eradicating the world of the polio virus. And it's a very weak virus, which is one of the reasons why it's been so hard to get rid of. So during that time, it's funny because there was, we were eradicating it around the world. And one day a guy came up to me and he said, hey, Dr. Frank, here's a newspaper article from the Wall Street Journal that says that some guy has just synthesized it. Why would we want to synthesize the polio virus when we're trying to get rid of it? And the answer is just because it's the simplest virus. It's very easy to build from scratch. So scientists, I'm a scientist, I get it. All around the world, scientists are always studying interesting viruses, and they're manipulating them, and they're mixing them, and they're trying to study them. If I was a scientist in the Wuhan virology lab, I'd love to study corona. It's a powerful virus. And, who wants to watch a virus that takes 10 years to develop? You want to watch a virus that takes 5 days to develop.
All right.
And then
let's-
you can quickly do your experiments and see what happens.
Let's transition real quick.
Sure.
Let's go to some crazy predictions.
Okay.
Okay, give us. Let's start with something easy. The election coming up this fall. What's your crazy prediction?
I've already posted that one because I sealed it in an envelope, mailed it to myself. No, I posted it. I posted it on Facebook in January. It's I made the same prediction in 2016, but it was only 2-1 then.
Mm-hmm.
We predicted Trump 13 months in advance in 2015. It was when we made that prediction.
And what's your accuracy rate?
I've only missed one election since the Reagan when I started.
Okay, so you're talking about since 80.
Yeah, I've hit every election, and I missed the midterm of Obama, and I always tell people on my page that I always go with the data. The data said that Romney was going to win, and so I went with that. My gut was like questioning it, but the data said that, so I went with the data. And then we're in 2020, it's 20-1 Trump.
When you talk about that data for these predictions,
Yeah,
let's say like the presidential election,
yeah.
where do you get that? And it's not from polls.
Well, it is partly from polls, but that isn't like the primary thing. One of the examples, there's a lot of mathematics in here, and I can get too technical and everybody's eyes will glaze over. So I like to try to think of simple ways to explain complicated ideas. So here's a simple way to understand. If you just took the last 20 elections, every 4 years, so it's the last 80 years, and you said, let's give two elections, give to the Democrats, and then 2 elections for the Republicans, and then 2 elections for the Democrats, and 2 elections for back, and just oscillate. Here, I'm learning to use my camera. 2 up, 2 down, 2 up, 2 down. You just keep doing that over and over again, 20 times. Well, not 20 times. You would do that 10 times. And if you said and use that as a predictor, you'd be right 19 out of 20 times. You would have predicted who was going to be the president just with that one simple pattern: up, down, up, down. But I like to include about 5 or 6 patterns, and then I combine them all into one prediction. And there's some uncertainty in each of them, so you can kind of calculate what the variation, what the odds are. And the odds when I did the 2015 were about 2-1 Trump, and then the odds this time are 20-1 Trump. People say, well, you're just biased or you're conservative, so you support Trump. Actually, when I made the prediction for Trump, I was supporting Rand Paul. I'm a libertarian. So I go with the math. I don't go with the politics. Now, one of the things that I did do is I do go into the polls, but I don't ever use the poll numbers that are reported. Those are practically useless. Most people think when they read a poll, let's say the poll says it's 53% Hillary and 47% Trump. Let's say they say that. Well, when you actually go back and look in the data, that isn't what they got. They've applied normalization factors to those data because they know when they do the sampling of polling, they don't get a proportional sample from the population, so they adjust it. And there are all these adjustment compensating factors in there that they use. Oh, gee, did we do the poll by telephone? Did we do it in person? Did we do it on cell phones? Because, conservative people don't answer the cell phone from whatever. Or, gee, people who are working tend to not be home to answer the phone call. So we end up getting more housewives. I'm being stereotypical there, but you get the idea. How you do the poll affects the results. So, and pollsters know that. So they use all these constants to adjust it. So in order to interpret a poll right, you got to dig into the data. Otherwise, it doesn't really mean anything. I don't know what the polls are saying now, but I would predict, I'm just going to predict because I don't know. I haven't seen anything but I'm going to predict that it's got Biden in the lead by at least 5, 6, 7 points, something like that right now. I wouldn't be a bit surprised. But I remember when he was trailing Hillary by about that much. And, here's another example. Like in the Democratic primary, Bernie against Hillary, the last 14 primaries, 12 of them, Bernie won. But nearly every one was called ahead of time for Hillary. So that shows you that the polls themselves, they're not a good indicator of what's going to actually happen. You have to dig into them to understand. And there's always this, who paid for the poll? Well, I think maybe Hillary paid for those polls that showed her winning against Bernie. That would be my guess. And, and if you're paying me to make sure the numbers come out a certain way, then I better make them come out that way, or you're not going to hire me for your pollster anymore.
So what?
So,
what
you come out you see where I'm going with this? So
Yeah.
polls are not what people think they are.
So what you're saying? Let me put this in Espinlab terms.
Sorry, did I get too technical?
No,
I'm a geek. I can't help it.
No. So they adjust after they've adjusted, while they're still adjusting, because they know they're going to have to adjust. Does that make sense?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I got you. Go ahead, Ed.
Okay, so I have a science book downstairs that I've kept because I've thoroughly enjoyed it when I was in high school. It was a 9th grade book, and it talked about how we were going to run out of oil, which I find hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
And so I ever since then,
I modeled that too, by the way.
Ever since, I'm one of these people that actually, I can't remember somebody's name, but I remember when I'm taught something like that, and I'm like scratching my head. Am I supposed to believe people now? So let's go on to something. Obviously, there's you're basically in this country and probably all around the world made fun of for actually questioning global warming and all this other stuff. And so what's your take on the current climate situation, and what's your projection or prediction on what's coming ahead?
So Einstein said, any scientist that believes his own theory ceases to be a scientist. What we're supposed to be doing, if we're real scientists, is we're supposed to be constantly questioning our own assumptions, constantly revising what we think based upon the latest data. Otherwise, we're just committed to it. And so I am a scientist. So I am constantly questioning what I see. And I don't mean that in like a negative way. It's not like I say, oh, there's some conspiracy, or I hate this person, or he's a liar, or something like that. It's as if I hear a claim, I check it out. So if somebody says to me, oh, the climate's warming, I say, oh, let me go look at those data. And so I go look at those data. Or somebody says, hey, the planet's cooling. Well, let's go look at those data, see what they think. So, you mentioned about oil, and that's called a Hubbert curve. And I went and I did all the math to figure out when the oil would run out and all that kind of stuff. I do that. That's my MO. That's how I think. So when somebody makes a claim, I check it out. So I've been tracking the climate since 1981 very aggressively for a funny reason. And it's because as a young chemistry student, as an undergraduate, the speaker at our department colloquium was the guy who coined the word greenhouse effect. So he came in, he talked to our chemistry department, and he said, we need to burn all the fossil fuels we can possibly burn to make the most CO2 so that we can warm the planet to stop the coming ice age. And our teacher assigned us the homework that night of saying, go back to your dorm room and calculate how much coal we'd have to burn to produce enough CO2 to raise the temperature of the planet 1 degree. So we all went back and did our dutiful thing. And then the next day, of course, we talked about it in class. And the way it worked out is we had to burn half of the known coal reserves in the world to raise the temperature of the planet for 1 degree. And it would only last a year. So the second year, we would have to burn the second half of all of our coal. And then we could keep the temperature warmer by 1 degree. So that kind of, you see, by being able to calculate what's actually going on, you can decide about the validity of a claim you hear. So when I hear, CO2 is causing global warming, I already know we can't make enough CO2 to do what they're saying. So they must be saying something else. So when you investigate it, you find out, yes, they aren't saying that CO2 is going to cause it. They're saying that we're at a tipping point, and that the slightest little bit of push one way or the other, because that's all CO2 can do is a little bit. It tilted just a little bit, then we go over this cliff, and that's what's going to cause the global warming. Now you wouldn't know that if you didn't read the scientific literature, if you weren't a scientist or didn't know how to do those calculations.
So just to be clear, man causing global warming, or it's the cycle?
Oh, the dominant thing is the cycle. Yeah, I mean, the ice age and the warming. And we even had a mini ice age about 300 years ago called the medieval the little ice age, they call it. And before that there was the medieval warming period. The climate is, oh man, it's so powerful. You know, the other day we had a rainstorm here where I was sitting outside, and this amazing thunderstorm came in. So I calculated how much energy was in it. I'm a geek. I do that. So, and the amount of energy in that one little pop-up shower was enough to power all of Cincinnati for about 6 months. Now, there is so much
power. Capture that.
Exactly. I mean, the energy, the forces in nature are massive and massively overwhelming compared to what we do. So now, I'm not saying we don't have an effect. We can have an effect.
What are you looking forward to? Is it cooling or is it going to warm next 10, 15 years?
I think it's going to be stable or cooling for the next 20 or 30 years. And it's because what they call this is not me saying this. This is the astronomical scientists who study the sun. We're coming into what's called a Maunder minimum, where you have really low solar activity. Mm-hmm. When you have really low solar activity, the solar wind doesn't hold back the cosmic radiation. So more cosmic radiation hits our atmosphere, which causes more nucleation sites, which make more clouds, which reflect more.
Wait a minute. So we don't have to shut down all the cars. We don't need to go back to riding on horseback and getting.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. And we're not worried
about it. In fact, I think we'd all be better off. We'd all be better off with twice as much CO2 in the air and a couple of degrees warmer. The planet, human beings, would be better off if we were a little warmer.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I don't know about you, but I'm having a ball. If
I am too.
If you're not having fun yet, I don't know what to say to you. I don't. But man, I'm telling you what, my feet are just sitting down here tapping on the floor, just tapping.
Are you telling me that if we go back out and get some big gas guzzler SUVs, retrofit them, get rid of that catalytic converter, next thing you know, bam, we get rid of that catalytic converter, we get that ozone heated up, we can get that temperature up 2 degrees, and more things would live?
Now, I'm a scientist, so you better watch out what you say, because what you just said I don't agree with. Because I want you to have that catalytic converter, because I don't want the sulfoxides and the nitroxides that are in the gas to make smog.
Okay, pretend.
So you better watch out, Buster.
I'm just talking about carbon dioxide.
No, carbon dioxide is great stuff. We need more of it.
I told you that before the show, Ed. Just exactly what the man said. You know what I'm saying?
I know. I should have remembered, George.
You should have remembered what I told you.
Here.
Okay. Let me. Wow. Let me put this up here. This lady has a question. Can you tell us what your thoughts are on the so-called hot spots, like here in Florida?
Okay. Yes, I can. Let me tell you what my definition of a hotspot is first, and then that we'll be clear. So when people say, "Well, where do you think the United States is right now?" I like to describe it as a hurricane. So the hurricane's already come through, it's already passed, and there are still a few places where maybe it's downgraded to a tropical storm. There are a few places, or you might describe it as a major forest fires come through, and the firefighters are walking around kicking over the logs, putting out the spot fires that remain. I think of those spot fires, those are the hot spots. And we do definitely in this country have some hot spots. Maybe out of every 50 counties, there might be one or two that are still having some trouble. But for the most part, the fire's gone. So there are some hot spots. And, I use the example on the website. It's called a drunkard's walk, where you have a drunk person walking along the sidewalk, and, they can go for a while, but sooner or later, they're going to fall off the curb into the street. But some of the walks last a very short amount of time. And those are the states that are completely done. And then some of the walks can last a long time, and that's maybe where the hot spots are. So, but for the most part, you can graph state by state. The states are done. There are just a few hot spots left, and those are usually like the most concentrated parts of the states, the densely populated areas where the infection spread a lot at first, so it's taking longer to clean it up. So that's what a hot spot is. A hot spot is where there's a leftover infection. Now, I don't think that's the way hot spots are reported, though, in the media. So in Florida, especially, I've noticed a lot of people are asking on the website, they're saying, our governor is saying we have a hot spot. So I go and I look at the data. To me, my first reaction when I saw the data, was, this is a testing anomaly, I call it. If a state suddenly starts dramatically increasing the amount of testing they're doing, you're going to find more cases. You didn't change anything on the ground. You still have the same number of people sick, but you find more of them because you're testing more. And you can look at the testing rates. They've been testing like, woo. Okay, so if you dramatically increase testing, you're going to find more cases, period. Second thing is cases are a really vulnerable thing. No test is perfect, especially when you're testing so many people in a broad way like this. Let's pretend that the test is only 95% accurate and you make 5% positives. Well, that means for every 100 people you test, you're going to get 5 false positives. So you're going to find a lot more cases even when there aren't any cases. So my first reaction when I get that question about Florida, for example, was to say, this doesn't sound right to me. This is a testing anomaly. But I did some more digging. And I mentioned the forest fires already come through. And I stand by that. I think that's where we are. We've got some hot spots left. But we have a new problem. And the new problem is that Mexico is still not at its peak, and it's nasty. And it is really growing fast. And there are something like 1.5 million people in Mexico that are expatriate. They're expatriate. They are American citizens. They are green card holders. They have every legal right to be here. And if I was in Mexico and they were coming into the worst of their epidemic, I'd get my family and I'd hightail it back into the country, which is what's happening. Okay, so a lot of people are coming back from Mexico, and this isn't me saying this. This is reported. This is a fact. This is not me making this story up. And you can see it in all the southern counties. Also, Texas hospitals and California hospitals, they're bringing back sick people from Mexico. I'm not as worried about that because the hospitals are really good at containing. So, if they bring a sick person over, they'll protect, and that probably won't spread to the population. But guess what else? And Florida is a perfect example. The migrant workers have been coming up. And we need those people. They're valuable people. They're beautiful people. I have nothing against Mexicans. I love them. Work with some at my various jobs. But they are leaving their normal annual migration. And guess what? They're bringing their epidemic with them.
Yeah.
And their epidemic is later than ours. So we're finished ours. They're still coming into theirs. So guess what? Their infections are now coming in.
Right.
Now, working to our advantage is that we've just had our forest fires. Once you've had a forest fire, it's hard to start a second one. You need time. So I'm not as worried about like a massive wave again because of them coming in. But certainly we're going to have flare-ups, places that the first fire missed. And Florida might be one of those spots because they didn't have a huge epidemic this time around, and they really did a good job protecting their aged people and their vulnerable people.
Yeah. You're a teacher, obviously. You're a professor, I assume, a researcher.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to this science stuff. But what math course do you think a kid's the most important class to take to be prepared for this kind of discussion? The fact that you're able to do this analysis.
I tell Dr. Schilling that I want every student who graduates from Schilling, I don't care if they're an artist, if they're an English writer, if they're a janitor, every student that graduates from Schilling's got to have a calculus class. Calculus is the way to think about the universe in deep, profound ways. If you don't understand calculus, you miss so much.
What's the particular thing in calculus?
Calculus is the way you think about, there's two big ideas in it. Calculus is the way you keep track of the way things change. That's called a derivative. So, for example, I could tell you we have 1,000 cases in Ohio today. I can tell you that. But I could also tell you we are changing at this rate. Calculus teaches you how to think in rates and how to work with rates. So that's the first idea in calculus. The second thing in calculus is what's called an integral. And it's where you can add up things. And it's a way for you to understand how things accumulate and why they accumulate. So, you think about a bank account. If I were to say, well, here, put $100 in the bank and you get 10%, how much money are you going to have next year? And everybody can go, oh, no problem, $110. Okay, what did you do? You took 10% of 100 and you added that 10%. By the way, that's a derivative. That's the first idea. That was the change. That was the 10%. That was the rate of growth, right? But now what's the total? Well, that's an integral. You have $110. How much do you have up next year? And then most people just jump right in and say, oh, 120. Oops, mistake, because now you got $110. So you have to get $11 interest the second year. So you're at 121. And they say, okay, I get it. And so then they'll say, okay, I have 121. Now I have to take 10% of 121.
Right.
And then, but what do you have in 30 years? That's a hard calculation.
Right.
Calculus is the math that allows you to do that calculation in one line. It teaches you how to think that way.
Yeah.
And it was discovered by Newton. Why? Because he was calculating orbits and he had to figure out how that planet was going to go, and he couldn't do the calculation a bazillion times.
Right.
He had to figure out how to add it all up at once.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool a while back. I'd taken some classes in college.
Yeah.
I was taking one class. It was such a difficult class. It was just myself in the class. And I went back and I came up with this formula, and I'm so proud. I went and showed it to the professor. I called him up on it. Turns out it was already a formula. I was like, darn, almost. But anyways, going back here on some of these questions.
Sure.
Why are sites trying to compete with what you're saying? What is it about?
Say that again.
Yeah, why are sites trying to compete, contradict what you're saying in your research?
I have an answer for that. So early on, when I first started the Dr. Frank Models page, 3 epidemiologists joined the page, and they were very unhappy with me. All 3 of them were telling me that what I was doing was going to kill people. And it's like, what? I don't want to kill people. They were saying that if you read the CDC webpage, for example, there are specific guidelines how you're supposed to report data to get the behavior from the populace that you want to get. It's like, I like to use the example with your children. If I have a 4-year-old child and he's running into the street, I run out and I grab him, take him by the arm, and I scold him, and as I might spank him too. And then as I bring him in the house, I say, look, if you play in the street, that truck's going to run you over and you're going to be a grease spot on the road. A little bit of fear is a good thing, right? Keeps him out of the street. Mm-hmm. If he's an adolescent kid, then I'll scream at him and ground him in his room and take away his electronics for an hour. And I'll tell him, hey, the truck's going to hit you next time. You better not do that. That was stupid, huh? I'll explain it to him, right? And besides, I'm too busy to clean up the mess. And then if it's an adult, if I'm talking to you and you're playing in the street, then I would say to you, hey, you're in danger. Here are the risks. Here are the numbers. This is why you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, right? But if I talk to you like a kid and I try to scare you out of the street, I'm not treating you like an adult. Right. Well, epidemiology is a science of epidemics. They study the mathematics of how epidemics work. I have no problem with that. There are social scientists who take that epidemiology and say to political scientists, here are the experiments we're doing to find how to get people to comply with what the epidemiologists are telling us is the bad thing. And you start with an epidemiologist, and then a social scientist, and then you have a political scientist, and then you have the governor and the media, and you end up with this. We're going to try to scare everybody to death to get them to do what they're supposed to do so that they will do what we think is best for them. And so that's the one side, is that they present the data in a way that scares people. The second thing is they withhold information that could contradict that. So when I show a deaths curve that peaked in the middle of April and has come back down again, and it shows that the epidemic's essentially over, they don't want to show that. Right. They want to show the cases curve that's going up dramatically, which, by the way, they caused to go dramatically because they did all the extra testing. So the reason why I think some people are opposing what I'm doing is because I think they think it's not helping the cause. It's not, whatever their agenda is, whether they're trying to save people's lives. Okay, I get that. I understand. Or whether they have a political motive where they don't want the state to open. So that's why I think people are opposing me.
George, can you put Mike Johnson's question on there?
That's it. Yeah.
You put Mike Johnson's question on there, George. Okay. So I thought we were told heat and humidity would kill the virus. Is that not the case?
Viruses aren't alive, but I know what he means. It's all about viral load. If let's say I was sitting in the studio with you there, and I cough in your face,
Mhm.
you know, and then you have to take out your rag and you wipe your face off. Okay, I just gave you a really good dose. Okay,
Mhm.
I don't care how hot and humid it is outside. You know, if you're if you didn't get enough sleep last night and you're a little weak, or maybe you've got a asthma or something, you're going to get it. Okay, it has nothing to do with the conditions, right? Nothing to do. If I cough in my hand and then I touch the doorknob, there's a little bit of virus on that doorknob out because it was on my hand and now it's there. And then you go up and you touch that doorknob. Now there's even less on your hand. That's a small dosage. That's viral load. That's a very little amount. And you're going to have to get that little amount to be right in the right places, maybe your eyes or your nose. Not typically your mouth. People think the mouth, no way, man. The mouth is like one of the most aggressive places in your body. It chews up viruses. You're going to get infected through your nose. Think about it. If you could get sick through your mouth, you couldn't eat half the stuff you want to eat. There's all kinds of stuff out there, right?
Right.
Your digestive tract is very aggressive. It's going to be your nose and your eyes, or I guess I should watch out. If you breathe into your lungs, certainly that your respiratory. Yeah. So I guess that's your mouth. So I'll qualify that statement, but you get the point I'm making.
Right.
So when I touch that doorknob, the virus doesn't have a very long lifetime on that surface. They don't survive well. They degrade quickly. Genetic material doesn't survive well. So the gentleman's question is probably, see, I didn't hear any of this guidance, but I'm just telling you what I know about viruses. If you wash your hands, you're not going to get it off the doorknob very easily, are you? And if you guys were told that the reason that the virus was going to go away when it got warmer was because the climate was going to get nicer and brighter, I think you've been mistaught. I think, like, every year there's a flu season, right? The reason there's a flu season is because people's immune systems are down because it's cold. It's because they're crowded up in tight spaces inside, like me sitting in the studio with you and coughing in your face. You increase exposure to each other by being in close proximity. When it warms up, people go outside. People spread out. We're not in each other's faces. We're breathing fresh air instead of air right in the house. We're not constantly touching the surfaces that each other are touching.
George,
So
can you pull up Lori? I'm sorry.
So did I answer that question?
Yeah, you did completely. Pull up Lori, would you? Okay, so here you go. Can you comment on the stories we hear about many people getting infected from a bar? As you know, in Florida, they closed the bars.
I didn't know that.
I'm sorry. As
George, yeah, I don't listen to the news.
George really pays attention to the bars. I don't.
I like bourbon neat. Yeah.
But it says, should these types of stories be of concern about what we hear about people getting infected from a bar that recently opened?
Who goes to bars? Cute young people. That's not true. There's a bar right around the corner. It's full of a bunch of old guys. So I think it depends, right? It's hard to generalize this kind of a question. If it's a young, hip joint where a lot of young people are going, yeah, they're going to probably spread it around a lot that night. If somebody there is sick. So you got to have somebody sick, first of all. You got to have somebody that's been sick for a couple of days at least, so that they've got.
Is there a danger, though, in hiding from the virus?
Say that again.
Isn't there a danger of hiding from the virus? I mean, in other words, isn't there something good about herd immunity?
Yeah, when I was a kid, my mom sent me to a chickenpox party, and we I don't know if you George looks like he might remember those.
Yep.
Ed, you might be too young, but that's how you get herd immunity, is you get everybody to catch it. I think herd immunity is a preposterous idea for COVID because we don't have enough infections to get enough herd immunity. My calculations suggest that, for example, in Ohio, I think it's going to be like 2 to 3% of the population that would have had it. In a place like New York, I'm guessing high teens, between 15 and 20%. And that's not even the realm of talking about herd immunity. I think the better way to think is like, and I always use this example for New York. Imagine, you've got thousands of people standing on subways, face to face, essentially kissing each other for 15 or 20 minutes and coughing in each other's face. And you do that twice a day. Okay, so that is like the perfect way to spread a lot of COVID in a hurry. Make sure everybody gets it, okay? And then they go home and they infect their families because they touch each other and they kiss each other and they visit grandma. And so, of course, since grandma lives with them or nearby, or they visit grandma and have dinner with her that night, grandma gets sick. So what happens is that first big time when everybody got infected in New York, a lot of people died and a lot of people got infected. Now imagine now in 6 months. Well, New York's back to work. It's coming into flu season again. Few people start getting sick again. It starts to spread on the subway. That's going to happen. We're going to have a second wave like that. Okay. But only half of the people haven't had it before now. So it will spread slower and it goes geometrically. So if you have half as many people who round numbers, pretend, let's say half as many people have already had it. Well, that's going to spread a fourth as fast already. Those people go home. Their grandma already passed away. I'm sorry. She already passed away. So there's nobody to infect there. So see what happens. There will be other infections. There will be other deaths, but it'll be much lower than the first time.
Okay. So for me, we're running out of time, and I'm just going to I'm going to ask you a kind of a two questions here. Number one, they kind of go with each other. Why are you so disciplined, and why should people trust what you say?
Well, that's a compliment. Thank you. I'm a scientist. Scientists protect themselves from their own biases if they're a good scientist. We're all biased. Everybody's biased. I'm biased. Everybody's biased. So we put good controls in place. If we want to really know the answer to a question, we have to use good controls. So and I really wanted to know the answer. Am I safe? Are my children safe? Is my wife safe? Is my school safe? If I listen to the media, I can't get a straight answer. So I did what a scientist does. I did an investigation. I set up controls and I did the experiment.
But you said a while back, you said that, one of your, philosophies as a human being, the one thing you don't waver on is honesty. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I tell my kids that's one of the big 10. Thou shalt not lie. And never lie, period. Never lie. If you feel a lie coming up in your mouth, just don't move your mouth. Just don't move your mouth. So I can be wrong. And believe me, I've been wrong many times on the page. You can go back and see because I've documented everything I've done. The purpose of the page was for me to document my thinking. It's a stream of consciousness page. Why would I lie to myself? I want to be able to go back and read it and see what I thought, when, and why. So why would I lie to myself? So that's one of the things. And then the other thing is that, so if people, I've tried to be really honest on the page and really transparent, and I think people sense that. I think so. And by the way, I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm showing you how to go find out for yourself,
George.
So that's maybe that's why people should believe me, because I'm not telling you to believe me. I'm telling you, go check for yourself. And when you find the same thing I find, then you're going to see I told you the truth.
I want to put this up here because this is how I feel. That this lady said it best. Every time I listen to Dr. Frank, I come away feeling smarter. Look, this dude is going to walk away tonight feeling like an Einstein. I am telling you, this man, and I was going to mention that word, Ed, after you was done, and you brought it up. He's an honest man, a very humble, honest man. And I could listen to him, my goodness gracious, I could listen to him for a long, long time.
George, you've never said that to me. Thanks, man.
That's all right, Ed. You're going to have to earn your stripes, you know what I'm saying?
I guess. Man.
This lady said, me too. I love hearing someone talk who is intelligent, but talk so the average person can understand. Dr. Frank, my grandmother, she was a very little lady. She raised 7 kids, 5 of them or 4 of them was boys. but she'd put a whooping on you in a heartbeat. And she was born in the late 1800s, and she didn't have much education, but she had a whole lot of God-given common sense. And she used to say when people would use these flowery words and
Yeah.
shooting them over top of her head, she used to say, "Hey," and she'd point her little finger at them. Say, "Hey, bring that down and put it on the bottom shelf where I can reach it." And no matter how flowery or how intelligent they were, they got the message immediately. And all of a sudden, they brought it down on the bottom shelf where grandma can reach it. You put things on the bottom shelf where people can reach them. And I'm just so delighted that you were able to be with us tonight. My, oh my. It's just, an Espen love word, fantabulous. It's just,
I like that one too.
yeah, it's been a fantabulous show. I'm telling you what. And he's a man of integrity. Man of integrity. My, oh my. Ed, your final thoughts, buddy?
I would say that I can honestly say this is one of my favorite shows, George.
Yes, indeedy. Yes. I've
Till
had
next week.
I've had a ball.
I say that all the time in my classes. Boy, I love that class. That's my favorite class ever. And then the next class is my next favorite class.
But we have had a ball. I know that much.
I too. I have also had fun. Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen. Wow. Whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world. Wow. And we reach around the world. So if you're overseas and you heard this or you're going to hear it on the replay, send me an email. Let me know, georgece@comcast.net. That's georgece@comcast.net. And it has been a delight. Dr. Frank, we're going to have you come back again.
Sure. I'll come give you an update.
All righty. That'd be wonderful.
You know what a good time would be? About a month. See how the stuff in the South develops, or if something flares up before then and you need an update.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll keep that in mind. We'll write it down. And Ed, don't let me forget.
All right.
Please
seal it in an envelope, mail it to yourself.
You got it.
That's it.
Will do.
I would do that. Then I'd forget where the envelope's at. So,
I understand that.
But anyhow, thanks, Ed. I really appreciate that.
I'll have some for myself.
Oh, okay. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very, very much. Here's what we would ask you to do. When this is over with, please start those watch parties and get this out into your news stream where we can't reach, but you can. Take it and put it out there. Start those watch parties. Share it all over the place. Because
send it to your governor.
Yes, send it to your governor. Yes. I might ship one up here to King Carney up there in Dover. So say, hey, King, take a look at this. You know what I mean? This is one of no, never mind. But anyways, just go ahead and take a peek at it, King. But listen, thank you so very, very much for being with us. We have had a delightful time, and I know people are going to continue to watch this. The numbers are going to keep on going up because this has caught people's attention, and I know that I feel a whole lot better now than I did this afternoon. So thank you. Listen, love one another. Take care of one another. Watch over one another. And please, don't ever be afraid to tell someone, I love you. It could possibly save a life. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I trust that God will keep you right in the center of his hand. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you, Dr. Frank.